Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. They are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. As some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless, thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we until we let go absolutely. Remember, we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, and powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at a turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are some of the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. Number 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrong. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all the defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make an amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for his knowledge of will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaim, what an order, I can't go through with it. Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and we could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could.
Thanks, Rachel. Somebody's got a gray Mustang or Charger or something that's blocking someone in. If you don't mind, if you could see if you could find another place to put it. They're the person that you're blocking in has to leave before the meeting's over. And I've asked Ryan to come read the promises.
Hello, family. My name is Ryan. I'm an alcoholic. 12 promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. 1, we are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. 2, we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. 3, we will comprehend the word serenity. 4, we will know peace. 5, no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. 6, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. 7, we will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. 8, self-seeking will slip away. 9, our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. 10, fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. 11, we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. 12, we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, everybody. I don't know the speaker real well. I mean, I probably know her really good for somebody I've never met until tonight, but I do know that she lives at the Bates Motel and she hides bodies in her backyard. That's about all I know about her. But I'm going to get Suzanne to introduce her. Suzanne knows a little bit about her. She's met her before. So.
Thanks, Gary.
Hi, everybody. I'm Suzanne. I'm an alcoholic and drug addict. Wow, I should have known you'd bring Baytown with you. And we're glad you're all here. And I guess Gary's already told the secrets. I met Stacy at a retreat, and you know, there's just some certain people you connect with. And this particular weekend, I connected with Stacy, and there's a lot of camaraderie. I can totally relate to her story. We've had several life events that parallel each other's that, you know, that we've dealt with anyway. And I don't think I've ever met, I want to say, somebody that possesses the willingness that you have to go to any lengths to be sober. I mean, come on, people, let's just face it. How many of you guys work with the same people that used to put you in jail? Anybody? I didn't think so. But I can say that Stacy's a part of her story, so I'm impressed with that, needless to say. And she's got a good program. It's a good, honest program. We talk about that three-legged stool. Stacy, I'd be willing to set my basket on your three-legged stool anytime. So I'm really glad you came this far to tell us your story. Come, let us hear it.
I'm Stacy. I'm an alcoholic. I might be a drug addict. I don't know. Oh, that's hard. Is there money in it? I'm really honored to be here, and you know, I know Gary from Facebook, from Susan, the other women I went to the retreat with, and Gary kind of creeped me on Facebook, I guess a couple years ago, and he's been my friend ever since. So this is actually the first time I've met him too, and I got to come see my friends from the retreat and meet all you good people here, a bunch of good drunks. It's weird being kind of out of my home group and out of town, so I'm a little nervous. I think anybody would be. My sobriety date is September 13th of 2012. I was born in Orange, Texas, close to Vidor. Everybody's heard of Vidor, I'm sure. Yeah. So, but you know, I grew up in a good family. Just a good family. My parents divorced when I was little, probably when I was about 4 years old, and I don't remember a whole lot of my childhood. Nothing really bad ever happened to me. I just remember the day that my dad left. And the day that my dad left, he kneeled down and he told me, he said, I have to leave because your mom doesn't love me anymore. And I turned around and I told my mom, I hate you. And I was probably maybe 4 or 5 years old at the time, but I remember that. And that event right there set a chain of events for the rest of my life as far as any men are concerned. I did see my dad a lot. My mom was controlling, very, very controlling. She didn't let me go out of the house and go do anything. I was a band nerd. I was a twirler. You know, I didn't do much, and I was in a small town, and I never drank until I was about 19 years old. And I went off to college in Dallas by myself. You know, and so there was this whole new world for me out there, and I was alone. My college was paid for. I went to a Vidor Fashion College, and it was an all-girls school. And we would, my friends brought me into Dallas, you know, to where all the clubs are, and, you know, we would drink and drive back, and, you know, I eventually, after I finished my first year there, I moved to the Art Institute, like right in the middle of downtown Dallas. And there all by myself with my friends in an apartment, you know, everything paid for. And I started drinking a lot. It, you know, it made me feel good, and it helped me to run from everything that I felt that I wanted to run from and to try everything that I wanted to do, because my mom never let me do anything. And, you know, I started doing drugs. Like, the first thing I ever did was some bathtub crank. Like, that's the first thing I ever did was some old bathtub crank. And, you know, I hung out with all those people, and I partied up there. I eventually dropped out of school, and I moved back to Vidor. And it seems like you know, all in the past 20 years, I always go back to Vidor. Like, why people go back to Vidor, if you live there, if you've been there, I don't know why people go back to Vidor, but I always do, and that's my home, and I love it. So I came back to Vidor, and I met this guy from Beaumont. He had a wealthy family, and he was so in love with me, and, you know, all this stuff. So I saw it as a way out, because I was lazy, and I didn't want to work, and I didn't want to do anything. And he bought me alcohol. He bought me whiskey. And so we ended up getting married, getting pregnant and getting married. Bought a house out in Atascocita, and we moved up here. And I didn't drink the entire time I was pregnant. But after I had my first daughter, she's 20 years old right now. I have a little 8-month-old grandbaby. And, you know, after I had her was when it really got bad. I started drinking a lot. I ended up having some kind of infection, and I started taking pain pills. My doctor was giving me pain pills. And that was kind of my first taste of taking any pills. And I would take those, and I would drink, and I was extremely violent. My ex-husband, he was a good man, very controlling, very insecure. He needs Al-Anon. But you know, him and his wife are one of my best friends now. But I got to where I was very violent with him. So his solution for my violent acts and my drunkenness was calling the police on me, and they would bring me to Kingwood Hospital and put me in there in the nut hut for a few days and send me home with a bunch of medication. And that went on for a while, and one day I had some of the medication that my doctor had given me, and we were fighting all the time. And I took 60 Remeron, the sleeping pills. And my daughter was probably a year old at the time. And I called him, and I told him that I took them. And he called the ambulance. And I can remember walking out of our house. And I couldn't get in the ambulance because I kept telling them I didn't want in there, and they didn't make me. So I got in the back of the cop car, and this is one of the cops that had picked me up all the time. And the last thing I remember was I laid down in the back of the cop car, and he said, "Sweetie, I cannot see you if you're laying down." And that was the last thing I remember for 3 days. Woke up 3 days later in ICU, and all these tubes. I didn't know what was going on. The nurse there, her name was Stacy, and she came in and she said, "I can't even believe that you're alive right now. I can't believe you're alive." And they had pumped my stomach, they did charcoal, they did everything they could do, and I later found out that they had called my husband about midnight that night and told him that he needed to get to the hospital and that I wasn't going to make it. And he told me, he said, "Seeing you laying there, that was the worst thing I've ever seen as a human being." He said, "What you were going through and, you know, all the things that, you know, the overdose makes you do." Well, the doctor came in, and he came in with these 2 young girls, and I think I was 21 at this time, and it was in the year 1999, and he came in with these 2 girls. The doctor that saved my life was an alcoholic, and he came in with these 2 girls from Alcoholics Anonymous, and of course, after you have a suicide attempt, they send you over to Rusk and all that good stuff. And I got out of there in a few days, so those girls came and swooped me up and brought me to Kingwood AA. And I can't remember really anything that went on because I was still on all the psych meds. You know, I just wasn't drinking, you know, and I thought that was okay. I remember I did have a sponsor, and I was there for about 9 months, and the girls that came to the hospital with me, we all ended up relapsing together. And that began my 20-year relapse, if that's what you want to call it. But, you know, we ended up partying together, and we would get high or get drunk, and we'd go sit in the meeting. And I didn't know back then that you could not, like, people can't, like, literally kick you out of AA because I was kicked out of Kingwood AA. They told me to leave and to never come back. I didn't know all the traditions and all that. I didn't pay attention because I was drunk and high most of the time. But they told me to leave, and they told me to never come back. So that's what I did. I continued on my partying streak, back and forth with my ex-husband, with my daughter, and we decided we were going to move to Virginia, and he was going to take a job up there. So we moved to Virginia, and I remember he flew out there, and it was in the wintertime, and my mom and I drove up with my daughter, and I was so messed up getting out of the Tahoe. I remember I had my daughter in my arms, and I fell down. And my mom's like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "I'm okay, okay." You know, but I was just wasted all the time, and that was just every day for me. We went to Virginia, you know, thinking that the geographical change was going to do something, but of course it didn't. You know, it was the same thing up there, the same violent behavior, the same alcohol and drug abuse, everything that was going on. So one day I decided that I was going to leave him, and I left him a letter, and I took my daughter, and I drove back to Texas. And moved in with my brother, continued on my drinking. I didn't want to take care of my child. Eventually, he had his mom come get her and bring her back to Virginia. I decided, you know, that I wasn't going to drink anymore, and, you know, I wanted to do something with my life, so I went down to the Army recruiting office. And I joined the Army because I was going to be a military police officer. That's what I was doing, and that's what I did. So went to the recruiting office. In 2 weeks, I was on a plane to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and they just had a blizzard, and it was cold, and it was snowing. And I was on the plane drinking vodka and cranberry juice, and I was the only person on the plane drinking. And I'm like, "Yeah, we're going to boot camp. Why aren't y'all drinking?" You know? And, you know, so we get up there, and if you've been in the Army, they don't send you straight to your company when you get there. They send you to these other little barracks to get you all prepped and your uniforms and your BDUs and all that stuff. So I went over there. I had really long hair at the time, and I went in there and got me a shower and washed my hair. And I started looking around. I'm like, "Where's the blow dryers?" They didn't have no blow dryers in there. And I'm like, well, so they sent me out to chow. And I walk outside, and it's nighttime, and it's been snowing, and my hair freezes. And I'm drunk. You know, and you think that maybe I'd be like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't do this no more." But I was like, "Oh, well, my hair's frozen. You know, I'll just do this." You know, I went through my AIT and my basic training. And I went, I was going through AIT, and I got hurt. You know, at this time, I was still talking to my husband. So 2 weeks before I graduated AIT, they gave me a choice. Either you can go home or be recycled into another company. And I can honestly say that I have no regrets for anything in my life, but this was probably the one regret I will ever have, is I chose to go home and go back to Virginia, and I left the Army. You know, and, you know, because I may have had a chance. I don't know. I probably would have been drunk there, too. So, get court-martialed for something. But I went back to Virginia thinking, you know, it's gonna be great this time. But that insanity of doing that same thing over and over, and knowing what the results are going to be, knowing what it's going to be. And I went back to that again, and I ended up leaving Virginia again. And at this time, you know, I left my daughter, and she was 4 years old. And I gave my ex-husband full custody, and I left, and I walked out on both of them. And I came back here to party, and back to Vider again. Came back to Vider again. Started hanging around a bunch of bikers that I knew growing up, and met this other guy, and started doing meth and everything else, and getting drunk every night. And I kind of fell into a really bad crowd after that. I was in an abusive relationship for about 4 years with this one guy, and went back to go live with my dad after he and I broke up. At that time, my stepmother had died, and so I was helping my dad out around the house, and he had me paying his bills and stuff online for him and doing all this stuff for him, and I was hanging out with all these freaking tweakers and all these drunks down at the bar, like the only bar, because Vider was dry for a long time, so you had to go kind of out of the county to go drink. This bar called the Field House that we go to, you know, and we used to call it the Field House. But I used to go there all the time, and So I didn't have a job, I didn't want to make any money, and, you know, I'm paying all my dad's bills and stuff, and his credit card bills, and I see, you know, on the computer, I'm like, hey, I can get one of his credit cards in my name, and he will never know, you know. And at this time, like I said, my stepmother had died. She had a lot of money in the bank, and I had her checks, so I started forging her checks, and probably drew about $10,000 that she had in the bank. My dad, I had his credit cards, ended up stealing about $80,000 from my dad. And so everybody kind of got word that I could do this stuff on the computer, you know, because I'm hanging out with a bunch of tweakers, and I'm like, I've been to college, and I've been in the Army, and I'm better than all y'all, you know? So I was like, I thought I was a celebrity. Till I went to prison. So anyway, you know, you know, everybody got wind that I could do all this stuff, so they start bringing me people's checking account numbers, their social security numbers, and, you know, all this other stuff. So at one point, I had a file that had all these people's information from around town and from everywhere. You know, and what I was doing, I was getting on my credit card online and switching from their bank account to my credit card and just switching money all back and forth, a lot of it. And one night, went to go get my computer from somebody's house, and Louder's a small town, and Louder PD was following us, and I was in the back seat. And turned down this dead-end road. They followed us down the dead-end road and went and waited somewhere else. And as soon as we turn on Main Street, which is the only street in Louder, the lights come on. And I'm in the back seat, and I'm the first person they asked to get out. You know, and they took my computer, and they took my file. They brought me down to the police department and gave me a paraphernalia ticket after all that stuff. Like, they had a table with all of the stuff just laid out everywhere, and I was like, I am so screwed. You know, I'm like, damn, because they had like both the counties, and they had the state troopers. It was like a big to-do. I was arrested at a bank one time too, trying to cash a check. That was like the first time I ever got arrested. I was arrested at the bank drive-thru. That sucked. Anyway, after that, you know, they took my computer, and I started hearing from the U.S. Postal Inspector. I started hearing from the Secret Service, and they wanted to talk to me about all this stuff I was doing. You know, so of course, me being I'm better than y'all because I've been to college and been in the Army, you know, everybody's, oh yeah, she's the one doing it. So, there I went. And the U.S. Postal Inspector, he was from Houston, but I was his very last case before he retired. And he was this old cat, and rode a motorcycle, and he was really sweet, and he kind of treated me like a kid, like his kid. And he called me up one day, and he said, you know what? He was like, I want you to leave Vider. I want you to get out of town and go start over somewhere else. So I moved to Groves, which is like maybe 15 miles away. So with this old biker that I knew for a long time, and so I cleaned up. You know, I wasn't doing dope anymore. I was just taking pills and drinking at that point. So I'm doing good, real good. And I got pregnant with my second child. My kids were 10 years apart, 10 years and 1 week exactly apart. So I got pregnant with my youngest daughter, Harley, and I took pills the entire time that I was pregnant with her. Thank God she is okay today. But the guy that I was with was extremely abusive to me. He did a lot of really horrible things to me. You know, if you've ever been in one of those relationships, it's one of those I can't get out of it, and, you know, you're not worth anything, and nobody wants you. Your parents don't even want you. They don't even love you. Nobody's ever going to love you. You know, and I had that mentality for a long time. And he beat me when I was pregnant. He beat me like when I had my baby, when she was in my arms. And this whole time I was pregnant, I was going through the pretrial process for the U.S. courts, for federal court. And so I had my daughter March 26th. I went in front of a federal judge March 6th of 2007. And her name is Judge Crone, and her name speaks for itself because she is the most meanest judge on the federal circuit in Beaumont. And and she looked at me. I was facing 23 years in federal prison for everything that I did. So I started turning everybody in because I was pregnant and I was not gonna spend 23 years in federal prison. You know, I don't care what anybody says about it. Anybody would have done it in my shoes. But she looked at me and she said, I don't want you to have your baby in prison. So I'm going to give you until May 1st, and then I want you to go self-surrender to College Station, to the federal prison camp. And they ended up giving me a year and a day. And in the federal courts, if they give you anything over a year, you only do 85% of the time. That's changed to 65%. That's what it was at my time. If they give you a year, you do the whole 365 days. So they gave me a year and a day. I had my daughter. When she was 2 weeks old, her dad beat the crap out of me. And I went to go live with my brother until, I went to prison. And May 1st of 2007, my family all came around, and I left my baby with my brother, with my mom that day. But my brother and my sister-in-law drove me to College Station. And I remember it was pouring down rain the entire time, and I kept telling myself, I'm not going to cry, I'm not going to cry. And I wasn't, because I was messed up on the way up there anyway. Didn't detox in prison. That's what I was going to do, and it's what I did. So I got up there and I did my time. It wasn't all that bad at all. I think James probably knows where that place is. Like right in the middle of the hood. I got out, went back to that same relationship, my daughter's father, back to the alcohol. And within a month, I had, my federal probation officer, I failed probably 4 UAs. And her and the head of the probation office, who is one of our board members where I work I work for a treatment center now. But she's one of our board members now, and she used to scare the crap out of me, and she used to tell me, that guy is going to get you sent back to prison. And sure enough, he did. I remember the one and only time I called the police on him. He had me on the floor, and he was beating the shit out of me, and he knocked 3 of my teeth out, and his little boys were there. And I told him to go to the room, and he said, no, they need to see what a whore you are. And that was it. And he threatened to kill me, he threatened to kill my family, and that was the one and only time I called the police on him. Of course, I went back after that. But one night, my little girl was asleep in the other room. He was passed out drunk next to me, and for some reason I was reading a book. I do read a lot. Everybody else in the house was asleep except for me, and I'm on federal probation. He's on state probation for the family assault, and we got shotguns in the house. And I'm laying there, and I just look up from my book, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go get that shotgun, and I'm going to kill him. But I'm going to torture him before I kill him. And I sat and I planned it all out. I planned all of it out in my head, what I was going to do. And, God stepped in, and I snapped to reality. And I went and got my little girl, and I got my purse, and I got in my car, and I left. I never went back. Of course, he did end up turning me into probation for running back and forth to Houston, going to the doctor, like everybody likes to do. He ended up turning me in for that, so I went back to federal prison for 9 months and just finished it out, because the federal probation office, my probation officer, Miss Mott, she gave me my 2-year chip, actually. They told me, your file is bigger than a sex offender's, and we are sick of you up here. So they sent me back to prison. It was only a matter of time. I wasn't done. I was not done yet. So I got out, came back to Vidor, and was okay for a while, got all in the church, and, I loved Jesus, and all this, I'm going to be okay. And, of course, before I knew it, I had a needle in my arm, and that was a big thing for me. That's a big change, because once you start doing anything that way, you're never going to go back. And that's what it was between meth and Dilaudid, and heroin, all of it. It was 2012. I remember you know, because my dad still let me stay at his house, and he'd moved out, so the house had been sitting there empty. I've lived there for about 10 years now. I still live in the same house that I shot dope in. And I was sitting there one day, I think I was walking through town, and I was walking across the railroad tracks, and it was cold. And I was like, how in the hell did I get here? Like, what is wrong with my life? But that didn't stop me. Then June came around. June 7th of 2012. I used to have to go get high to go do anything with my mom and my daughter. My mom got custody of my youngest daughter after a custody battle, but she's had custody of her since she was 4. She still has her. I have to get high to go over there, so she was having this vacation Bible school thing, and so of course I got high before I went over there and went to the church. But before we left, we were sitting at my mom's house, and she got a phone call. My sister, who lived in Magnolia, had gotten in a car wreck, and my brother-in-law said, you know, they didn't seem like they were too concerned. So we went on ahead to the church and did this thing, and came back to a phone call from my brother, and I remember my mom saying she didn't make it. And my sister was 13 years older than me. She pretty much kind of raised me. I spent a lot of time as a child with her, and we hadn't spoke to each other in 4 years. Like, even when I lived in Arlington and she lived there, I spent a lot of time with her when I was in college. But I remember, you know, of course, because I didn't have any emotion, you know, so I'm so messed up and high all the time, I don't know how to feel about anything. And my mom just lost her firstborn child. And my mom asked me, are you even upset? I'm like, yeah, I'm upset, you know, but I got to go get high. You know, I didn't say that to her, but that was my first thing. You know, and so I used that. Went out over my friends, hey, my sister just died, can you give me some dope? You know, the pity dope thing. And I used that for a long time. And she died June 7th of 2012. June 13th of 2012 was when we buried her. And I had to come up here with my mom for a couple of days. Of course, I had to, you know, bring something with me so I'm not dope sick at the funeral. And you know, I've been ostracized from most of my family at this time. My mom and dad are the only ones who would even talk to me. They wouldn't enable me, that's for sure. They'd feed me, but tell me to get the hell out. They wouldn't do shit for me, and I'm glad they didn't. Came up to the funeral, and I remember we pulled into my sister's house, and I hadn't seen my brothers or anybody, my brother-in-law, in a long time. And the first thing I did was go into my sister's house and go in her bathroom because I needed to go get high. And I remember sitting there, and that was that moment of powerlessness for me, the incomprehensible demoralization. Because I'm sitting in my sister's bathroom, she just died, and I got a freaking needle in my arm. You know, and I remember like it was yesterday, and I do believe that God lets me remember these things because I remember all the feelings. I remember all the shame and guilt and remorse sitting on that toilet, you know, thinking she would kill me if she knew I was doing this, and she knows I'm doing this, you know, but that didn't stop me either because I went back and for 3 months did the same thing. And it's funny because, you know, after all that money I stole from everybody because I was so badass, one of my friends had somebody's checkbook, and I decided to write some $60 check to Pizza Hut, forged it, and that is what I went to, I got in trouble for. I got caught. But that $60 check to Pizza Hut is what changed my freaking life. And me and the cops laugh about that shit today because it's so funny. They're like, what the hell? You know, so I got busted forging somebody's name to a $60 check for Pizza Hut. And I had this court process I'm going through for county court for the felony. And they're wanting to give me 2 years TDC because I've already been to prison. And the judge is a judge that I went to high school with. I grew up with her. She was a year behind me. And it was really humiliating. And I remember, you know, there was always people at my house. There was always something going on. My phone always ringing, or something. And the night before I went to court, my lawyer told me, you're not going to go to jail. We're just going to exchange lawyers and we'll reset it. And it was supposed to be my sentencing, and my mom ended up hiring a lawyer. And I was sitting there at my house that night. I called my mom. I said, Mom, I'm tired. She said, you didn't get any sleep last night? I was like, no, Mom, I'm tired, And we didn't talk about it. She knew what I did. So I'm tired. And every time, twice before, I would ask God to help me, I'd go to jail. Every single time. And so I hit my knees that night, and I was like, okay, God. I was like, I'm tired of doing this. I'm tired of living this way. You know, because I'm either going to die or I don't know. There's nothing any worse than that. But I can't do this anymore. And I know I'm going to jail tomorrow no matter what anybody tells me, because this is the only way that I know you can stop me. And that morning I woke up, I drank a bunch of whiskey, shot about 4 Dilaudid, and went to court. The judge, Courtney, you know, she looked at me and she was like, no, take her out of here. You know, and that was the day I got sober. That was the day for me, and I've been sober ever since. When I went back in front of her, because they were wanting to give me that 2 years. Went back in front of her, and it was funny because a couple weeks after I kind of started drawing out and a little bit, I had this dream about my sister. You know, the grief started hitting. The grief set in. I'm starting to get a little clear-headed. I'm starting to get sober, and the grief set in. And I had this dream about my sister. And there was a bunch of people in the dream, but my sister was in this blue dress that I have a picture of her on my wall. And in that dream, she said, you're going to do things different this time. And I remember waking up and calling my mom, just crying. And my mom was crying, and I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it meant till I came to the rooms of AA. You know, that we have to do things different in here. And that judge, she said, this is hard because I know you and you know me. But she said, I'm not sending you to prison. She said, I'm sending you to treatment. And she sent me to ISF, which is a TDC treatment facility. I've heard a lot of negative things about it, but that place saved my life because I was just done. I didn't want to live that way anymore. I didn't want to do the things that I was doing. And I went in there and I got honest with myself. I got honest with myself about everything I had done to everyone, everything I had done to myself, my children. Did whatever they told me to do. And when I got out, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. But I got out. I started going to meetings, and I was going to outpatient treatment. I started out at the other fellowship, but quickly moved to AA. I brought my friends from NA up here. That's where a lot of my friends are. But I moved to AA, and I got a sponsor. My sponsor said, are you willing to go to any lengths? And I'm like, yeah, sure. You know, and, you know, over the years, you know, any lengths is painful. It's painstaking. It's a painstaking process of, you know, not being in pain, but being willing to go through the pain to heal and to get better. And that's, you know, been that process for me. And it has been nothing but trudging and fighting and scraping every day for, you know, almost 5 years now. But the going to any lengths is very important. You know, everybody tells you, take whatever job you can get, you'll be okay. I used to dig termite trenches for a freaking exterminator when I first got sober. And it sucked, and it was in the summer. But I had my first spiritual experience in that time. And it was so funny, because I'm sitting there, I did not want to work that day, and I was sitting there digging in this dirt. And I'm like, how can I get out of work? And how can I get out of this? How can I? And I heard my sponsor in my head go, are you willing to go to any lengths? And I was like, ugh, yes, I am. And that's just, you know, I felt God in that moment. And I felt, you know, the peace came over me. And I'm like, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And so I sat there in these termites and in the dirt, just crying. And nobody was around but me and God and the termites. But, you know, it was awesome. It really was. And I'm like, really? But, you know, as in the years have gone by and I worked my program, you know, everybody tells you, don't get in a relationship for a year. Well, I waited 2 years. And I don't date in AA. I go to NA to get. Yeah. That's the smart thing to do.
Sure does.
Yeah. So we were together for 2 years. He's a great guy, awesome guy. And we used to sell dope to each other a long time ago, matter of fact. Known him for a long time. And I got complacent in my recovery, and I got very codependent, which it had been very suggested to me that I go to Al-Anon. We don't need no Al-Anon. But I got complacent in my recovery, and I got very codependent, and it put a strain on my relationship. And one night I asked him, do you want to be with me? And he said, I don't know. And this was October. I just got my 4-year chip. Just got my 4-year chip. Exactly a month after I got my 4-year chip, October 13th of last year. And he said, I'm not in love with you anymore. And I was like, get the hell out of my house. You know, and I was heartbroken. I was freaking crushed. You know, that was probably the hardest thing I dealt with in my sobriety. But I got up and went to work the next day. You know, and I was a crazy ex-girlfriend there for a few weeks. I was just a crazy woman, you know, and I was in touch with my sponsor. I started going to Al-Anon. And, you know, started doing everything that I needed to do in my recovery. And that was probably the best thing he could have ever done for me, was leave me. You know, because we're both very engaged in our relationship with God. You know, if God tells me to do something, then I need to do it. And he had been sitting there not listening to God, and he was like, you know, I have to do this. I have to leave you right now because this is the best thing for you. And it was. I didn't think so at the time because I was heartbroken. And I can tell you, this 5th year, coming into my 5th year of sobriety, has been absolute shit. It's like, cause, you know, my boyfriend left me, and my dog died, and you know, it's just been one thing after another. I'm like, is this what this 5th year is that everybody tells me about? But you know, it was one thing after the other. But there were a lot of good things happen. You know, my little girl, she wanted her name changed to my last name. We were able to get that done. My mom's had custody. I don't pay child support, so I thought it's time I can afford to pay child support. Well, they took a whole lot more than I thought they were going to. So I'm like, okay, I can deal with this. My 20-year-old, I still pay child support. Back pay. I owe $36,000. And I'm down to like 13 now. You know, that's what we talk about, financial amends. Like, if it was up to me, I probably wouldn't be paying it. But, you know, this is one of those financial amends I got to pay because it's taking care of my kids. And now it's taking care of my grandbaby. But they decided to up that too. So that was a big strain on me as well, you know, financially. And it was like every single month this year, the house that I live in, it's my dad's house, but he never got it changed into his name. It's still in my deceased stepmother's name. After 13 years, her daughter decides she wants to evict me. I'm like, what is going on, God? Like, it's like but she couldn't evict me because it's my dad's life estate. But, you know, all these trials, you know, that we go through, the painstaking trials in recovery, and, you know, that's why the unity is so important in here, and why the women are so important in here for me. I don't care about you guys. Especially Carrie. No, but it's because that's what's kept me sober, and service work. You know, I'm a big service work junkie, and a lot of people don't do service work anymore. But that's one thing I'm very adamant that my sponsees do service work. I've always been into service work, and sometimes even my sponsor told me, yeah, I think that is the only thing that has kept your crazy ass sober. You know, this year is just diving into service work. But you can't do too much service work because I wasn't taking care of me. And I was getting to where I do service work because it's how I run from taking care of me. Because I don't want to face myself, and I don't want to get honest with myself, and I don't want to face the pain that I'm having to face. So I go and do all this stuff for everybody else because, you know, I'm so great and all. You know? So, but, you know, that's one thing I actually recently changed sponsors. After almost 5 years, it was just time for us to part ways and move on. And I've got a new sponsor that's very involved with me, and I have like one sponsee because everybody thinks I'm mean, so nobody asked me to sponsor them. I don't know why. But I don't know. It's just it's a process, and it's just painful sometimes. And this year has been painful, and I've been tired, and I've asked God, what in the hell is going on? But I'm gonna trust you. And my relationship with God throughout my whole sobriety, I came to a point where I was like, okay, I've got to believe in something, because I was taking something from every different religion, because I was running from believing what I knew to believe in, and that worked for me for a while, but it stopped working. And I was like, okay, now it's, where the rubber meets the road. This is what separates the men from the boys. And I had to stop and just totally surrender, because that's something I didn't do. I was always holding back, and I was always boxing God, because I get me and God confused a lot. And that's one thing I've really learned this year, is having to surrender and to let go, and to get back in my recovery and back in the basics, and working with women and doing things with other people, because I'll isolate. I'll stay at home like all the time. And I like doing that because I have cats. I have a bunch of cats, and I hang out with my cats. And I got a new dog, a weenie dog, and she just thinks the cats are hers, and they play, and that's what I do. I don't want to go anywhere. I'm not people-y. And, but I've learned that I have to do that. I have to get out and go do things with people, and I have to participate in my sobriety, because people are watching. People watch what we do in here. If you're acting an idiot, then they're going to know, especially like on Facebook. I'm guilty. Because I like to tell everybody about what they're doing wrong and their character defects, because I recognize that in me, either whether I'm participating in them or not. But my boyfriend and I actually got back together after 8 months, and I grew a whole lot in that 8 months, both of us did. We still kind of saw each other, but he actually came to me and said, I want to work this out with you, and it's been weird, because I've gotten to where I'm so independent now. I'm like, what do I do with you? I'm like, hey, across the room. But it's great, because, I can go do my own thing now, and I can be here present in my sobriety without thinking, because I had that abusive mentality that I carried with me from that other relationship, because I have PTSD from what this dude did to me. And I don't know where he is today, honestly. I don't know. But, I carried that in my head, so, I lived 2 different relationships in my head. And that's hard. It's hard. It's tiring and exhausting to do that. But, I do have a great life today. I work for Unity Treatment Center. I'm the executive director secretary. And, my boss, he's been sober 36 years. I work with a lot of other people in recovery. He's from Boston. He's great. And it is a great job. I've been there 3 years now. And, like I said, it's painstaking. And that's the thing that always, stood out to me, is that this is a painstaking process. And how it works, we stood at the turning point. And I stand at those turning points all the time in my sobriety. And it's like, okay, my ass is for care and protection, with complete abandon. And that complete abandon, these put these words in the big book, like complete abandon, and they just put all these big words in there that are really small, but they really mean something in the big book to me. When troubles come, we cheerfully capitalize it as an opportunity to demonstrate his omnipotence. We cheerfully. Who wants to, I know that everybody in here has been through some shit in recovery, and that is not cheerful at all. But those are the things out of the big book that always come to my mind when I'm going through things. And, those are the things that will stick with me, and it's different for everyone. And I don't know. I guess that's about it. I'm really grateful that you guys had me here. I don't think I left anything out, but I'll let you know. Love you too. That's all.
Okay. Really appreciate Stacy coming out and sharing with us. And really appreciate all her friends that made the trip to support her. It's been a great meeting, great fellowship together. Let's bring us to the close of the meeting. Are there any AA related announcements? I don't get to make the announcement on Stacy anymore, so.
Well, there is one on Suzanne, an alcoholic and drug addict. I'm not sure if we know exactly what weekend, but one weekend this month, the group is going to be, I think it's the 22nd. It is the 22nd. We're going to shut this down to do some renovation. So you'll have a list of meetings this month, so we just won't have any meetings here that weekend.
My name is Sarah. I'm an alcoholic. There will be a women's meeting that Saturday. It's going to be at my house. It's going to be a meeting and potluck. I live right in Magnolia, and our poster girl has a headache, so it didn't make it. It'll be here tomorrow with my address and phone number and information. So we will be having a women's meeting, and all are invited.
So on that note, the Sunday noon meeting that weekend will be at Spring Creek Park, probably under the pavilion.
I'm Ryan, I'm an alcoholic. Tuesday the 11th, there is a comedy act at one of the comedy spots up here in Houston. They're both in recovery. I think it's quite funny. A bunch of us are going to be going down to that. Can't laugh at being what we are, then what can you laugh at, right? And then on the 15th here is a karaoke party night after the 6:30 meeting.
Yep, that's right. Lots going on, people, lots going on.
Any non-AA related announcements?
And Michael, I'm an alcoholic. Every Friday night following this one, so in about 20 minutes, we're going to have a no boundaries meeting. Same format as an AA meeting, but it's open discussion, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is there. So if you want to stick around and get a meeting, we're here.
Okay. All right.
One more thing, there's a lot of food left, so please call our guests. Make sure you leave here with a full stomach.
And I do want to thank all the people that brought food to help out with this, show a little hospitality to our guests. Here at the Acceptance Group, we're on a chip system. First chip is a desire chip. It's an outward token of an inward desire to do something about your drinking one day at a time. Like stop. Anybody want one? Next chip, first chip in the earned time and sobriety of 30 days and 1,000 nights and a few lousy weekends. Anybody got 30 days? Okay. And we have 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 9 months. Here's the multiples go up on the board. We celebrate July 29th this month. It's the last Saturday. We're preceded by an eating meeting, so come out if you're celebrating in the month of July and would like to celebrate with us. Put your name on the board, and we'll be happy to talk nice about you if you have money. Okay, I think, remember, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principle before personality. What you hear here, who you see here, who you see here, let it stay. We have a moment of silence for the alcoholic that still suffers in and out of these rooms. And keeps us sober.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. Hey, there we go. I left out a bunch. Oh my God. I'm like, I'm rolled out left by the Right?
I don't want to get. I'm the other fellowship, so you know.
Yeah, right. I know.
I get to see you cleaner than
Yes, I know.
So we can break her away from and I would have signed that. I didn't even.
I'm also a terrible friend. It's like all my feelings. I don't find it.
I didn't get it.
Alright, thank you. Wow. Yeah. Wow. I get through it. Nothing but God. Thank you. Thanks, guys. You too. I'm glad I got the last part. Can I sing it? What? Oh, yeah. I'm like, what?
So I said we're going to say tea. So I have a really good.
Yeah, right.